Lesson 18. The Educational System. Introduction. It is often said that the only solutions of our social problem is to be found in education. Social problems are varied. They are poverty, unemployment, dowry, etc. This is probably true, but it will require a different system of education from that which we now have. The world finds itself in a serious social, economic and political crisis. All sane persons want civilization to move ahead rather than collapse. Education can provide the only safe leadership towards progress and prosperity. For an orderly social advance, we must rely more and more upon the educational direction of the social process. The social problems of today have become so complicated that only well-educated, public, social workers can deal with them effectively. The present system of education is inadequate to supply the leadership that is necessary in the present crisis. It will not save the world from war and depression. The vital importance of education today. We must remove useless antics from the curriculum, stress the realities of the 20th century, and offer protection to members of the teaching profession who speak out with courage and honestly about the facts as they are. The social studies present the only cogent information that can help us bridge the gap between machines and social institutions. More time should be given to social studies. Also, their content must be made more vital and be linked up with the immediate problems of our day. Education is our best safeguard against fascism and capitalism. It is the foremost bulwark of communism, cowardly and time-serving. It will only contribute to the general inevitability of general misery and chaos. In an age of social decline and barbarism, there is little place for education. Example, the history of the Dark Ages. Most people think of education as being synonymous with the school. This leads to false notions and unreasonable hopes. It is doubtful whether the school is even the chief educational agency in modern society. The teaching-learning process is a continuous process. It results in the socialization of the person, literally from the cradle to the grave. Only a small part of the total education of a person is spent in school. A person learns continuously through a wide variety of media outside school, from movies, radio, television, temples, political speeches, newspapers, magazines, books, informal associations with other people, and from various other sources. As an institution, on the other hand, education is chiefly the function of the school sponsored by society. Education impaired by other agencies such as the movies, the play group, etc., are incidental to other function. In the broadest sense, education is synonymous with the socialization of the person. In its more strict sense, education as an institution consists of the programs of the formal education organization of the society, and the effects of these programs on the persons influenced by the organization, says Kuber. Definition. The term education comes from the Latin word educare, which literally means to bring up. The genuine idea of education in our culture is not merely to lead the pupil in the acquisition of knowledge and experience, but also to bring him up or develop in him those habits and attitudes with which he may successfully face the future. Plato held that the end of education was to develop in the body and in the soul all the beauty and all the perfection of which they are capable of, or to develop, in short, a sound mind in a sound body. According to the conception of Aristotle, to educate men to develop man's faculties, especially his mind, so that he may be able to enjoy the contemplation of the supreme truth, goodness and beauty in which perfect happiness essentially consists. But in practice we see that education consists in an attempt on the part of the adult members of human society to shape the development of the coming generation in accordance with its own ideas of life, says James Welton. Moreover, of all living beings, man is the one who needs more than anyone else the help of his parents, whereas the young animals can do without them. The young of the lower animals knows how to care of itself. The young infant has to learn how to live freely. That is why education, in one way or another, is the initiation of the young in the ways and lives of their elders, which is a universal feature of human society. In modern times, the family remains the most powerful agency of education. Education as an institution makes its early appearance even in simpler societies in the form of initiation rites. The use of tutors or teachers is a comparatively recent development in society. Education is formally concerned with the transmission of the social heritage to new generations. It is also a conservative agency, as most institutions are. But that does not prevent it from training the inventor or the social reformer. Modern inventions of social and economic reforms have come from men engaged in our educational centers. At any rate, the influence that is one way or another education exerts on society, and society on education, entitles us to say that one of the most direct ways of discovering the goals and ideals of a society is to study its educational system. The ends of education or its functions. Education of the young is a universal process found in all human societies. Everywhere man feels it necessary to bring up his young by reaching there with the culture of his society. This is done either through the family or through organized education or religion. Children are taught the folkways and mores which enable society to exist. Thus the cultural heritage of society is preserved, which is indispensable to the community of any society. Adults help the young in imparting education, which is necessary for the survival of society. The tasks of education are entrusted to special agencies and institutions. We shall discuss the specific aims of these agencies and the ideals guiding them. A man is first educated by his family in ordinary life. Nature itself provides the foundations for a type of stable and spontaneous education, example, carvings for protection and mutual love between children and parents. Besides, the family is a primary group. Here the child's behavior is controlled through education. When the behavior is regulated and controlled, the child grows into a responsible adult member. Good values are inculcated in him by the family. This also helps to understand the sense of belongingness to society. Thus, the process of socialization takes root properly in the life of an individual. He can develop a well-integrated personality, which helps him to adjust his life with other members. Thereby he promotes harmonious social relations in society. Lack of proper adjustment and harmonious, stable social relations are the root causes of so many social ills of society, such as suicide and crime. As regards The education of any man as a member of a nation or society, he must be not only acquainted with its history and tradition, but also identified with good aspirations, hopes and ways of life. In this connection, it is worth mentioning the Mudaliar Report on Secondary Education, 1952. Citizenship in a democracy is a very exacting and challenging responsibility for which every citizen has to be carefully trained. It involves many intellectual, social and moral qualities which cannot be expected to grow of their own independent judgment on all kinds of complicated social, economic and political issues, and to a large extent decide his own course of action. The various function of education. There is considerable choice as to the form, content and purpose which a society may include in its education efforts. Education may be formal or informal. It may be dominated by the family, by the government, by organization, or by some combination of these. Education may be extended to both sexes or limited to one. The sexes may be segregated or they may be educated together. The culture of society may condone or encourage universal education. Education may be concerned with training people for vocations, or it may be the purpose of education to mold people along a single basic pattern, or it may be considered desirable to encourage individuality in individual differences. The education system may exist for the purpose of indoctrinating or for encouraging free thinking along certain lines. In short, there is almost no end to the differences which can be found in the educational system and philosophies. One of the most important problems in the field of education is to find a way in which to harmonize in a system of education, humanistic studies, scientific studies, and technical training. We shall first deal with technical education. India is a developing country. The neglect of science and technology can be considered to be an important factor responsible for the low level of progress. Yet, India is on the move against with the promise of a new renaissance in the making. The economic well-being of a nation depends upon its manpower. A nation's wealth is in its people. People have highly developed skills and abilities and also a general and flexible education to enable themselves to adapt rapidly to the changing circumstances will bring such riches to the nation which cannot be brought forward by any other means. Therefore, technical education is a must for India. Technical or vocational education is a training given to men or children in order to enable them to perform with skill a utilitarian task. Such as, for instance, the training in weaving, iron smelting, pruning of trees, etc. It applies to industrial as well as agricultural pursuits. The two important things about this type of training are that it is necessary for modern society and that properly imparted, it has also an educational value. In our country, the higher education was more academic or literary in nature. It still continues to turn out a high proportion of liberal arts students and all too few engineers, technocrafts experts, and workers worth the name. Even the organization of technical education is not need-oriented. As a result, we find that this education affects the prosperity of the nation. Therefore, the country at the present juncture requires giving a greater scientific and technical bias to her educational programs. No doubt, the government has taken the initiative in this respect, but more concentrated efforts are needed if the country has to march towards prosperity. Technical education by itself cannot take place of a liberal education. The efforts made in this regard are far from encouraging. The reason seems to be that the technique underlying vocational training is different from the one underlying cultural or liberal training. The former is special, while the latter is general, and the effects of specialization may be deleterious to young people. Basic education. Such difficulties are also felt in the application in India of the Vardha scheme, now called Basic Education System. Its aim is to impart general education to school education through a vocation or handicraft. Researchers reveal the following trends in this education. First, the rapid improvement in craft made by students in the lower classes is not maintained after a few years of schooling. Secondly, the relation between craft ability and personality development patterns is very low. This is one of the main reasons why in many places the Vardha idea has been watered down, and the principle of teaching all subjects through a handicraft has been modified beyond recognition. The present tendency in the basic and vocational schools is to reach a liberal or general education course together with crafts. Moreover, the imparting of vocational training, especially at high school, is an appropriate way of meeting the needs of an expanding industrial society and of educating the citizens according to democratic principles. Humanistic and scientific studies must be coordinated in college education. Similarly, technical or polytechnics are considered as advanced despecialized institutions for the professional or other vocational pursuits. Social education. Definition. Maulana Azad, the first educational minister of India, gave a new nomenclature to adult education as social education. He said, by social education we mean education for the complete man. It will give him literacy, so that the knowledge of the world may become accessible to him. It will teach him how to organize himself with his environment and make the best use of physical conditions to which he is subject. It is intended to teach him improved crafts and modes of productions so that he can achieve economic betterment. It also aims at teaching him rudiments of hygiene, both for the individual and community, so that our domestic life may be healthy and prosperous. The last, but not the least, this education should give him training in citizenship so that he obtains some insight into the affairs of the world and can help his government to take decisions which will make for peace and progress. According to Professor Humayun Kabir, social education may be defined as a course of study directed towards the production of consciousness of citizenships among them. It is not content with the introduction of literacy among the grown-up illiterates, but aims at the production of an educated mind among its masses. As a natural corollary, it inculcates in them a sense of rights and duties of citizenship, both as individual and members of a community. On this basis, the social education in a controlled experience increases the ability of the individual in their participation in social activities. We shall see the aims served by social education in society. It has already been said that modernization also includes social awakening and social development. This role is best played by social education. Mohanlal Saxena Committee, 1949, formulated the following aims of social education. 1. To awaken the citizens towards their rights and duties and to develop in them a feeling of social service. 2. To develop in them a love towards democracy and to give them training for administrative work in the administrative machinery of a democratic government. 3. To develop in them a feeling of pride for Indian culture through an education of history and geography. 4. To acquaint them with problems facing the country and the world. 5. To acquaint them with moral values through group discussions and study. 6. To provide them facilities for learning, reading, writing, and simple arithmetic and to encourage them to develop their knowledge. 7. To give proper training in handicrafts so that they can utilize their leisure for economic uplift. 8. To keep up with the learning process through libraries, discussion, groups and education committees. 9. To inculcate the feeling of cooperation in them. Social purposes. We shall now indicate how social education helps social purposes. 1. It promotes social cohesion. 2. It seeks to conserve and improve national resources. 3. It builds up cooperative groups and institutions. 4. It inculcates social ideology. Social education is thus the foundation on which alone free India can build up a welfare state which recognizes the claims of both individual freedom and social security. The place of the teacher in education. We know that the teacher is the sole or vital part of the educational system. Educational scheme cannot succeed without a competent body of teachers. The teachers must also be well trained for the task of imparting education. Their cooperation to the life and welfare of society is of paramount importance as they are expected to achieve the following ends for which higher education stands. 1. Transmission of the intellectual and ethical heritage of humanity to the young. 2. Enrichment of this heritage and extension of the boundaries of knowledge. 3. Development of personality, according to Radha Krishnan report. The teacher is expected to live in accordance with the high standard of moral integrity. In fact, few are the persons who join the teaching profession attracted by high salary. In an inquiry conducted among teachers in Punjab, it was found that the economic incentive ranked very low in the scale. It was the lack of future rise, a defective system of education, an unsympathetic attitude of officers which deferred many to take teaching, says Gisbert. The immediate causes of this are the scarcity of government grants, the low fees that students pay, and the high expenses that have to be incurred. But the remote causes are more important from the sociological point of view. Parents want good teachers and suitable educational institutions for their children, but not even prosperous nations are ready to pay for them. Rich people think of allocating their surplus money to any productive economic purpose except education. Money is the measure of all things. The lawyer, the politician, and the engineer are usually well paid because their role in society is acknowledged as beneficial. But curiously enough, this does not seem to apply to teachers. It is an irony of fate that it is in the midst of a democratic society. It is still possible to have great admiration for those aristocratic times when kings and people, noblemen and bishops, and anyone who had the means, considered it a privilege to open a school or college, bequeathing to it a generous endowment. Perhaps the phase that governments in the past used to maintain educational institutions has induced the persuasion that individuals should not trouble about it. Once more, state help is killing self-help. The results of this situation are everywhere present. One result is that many persons otherwise capable of being teachers do not join the teaching profession when they can procure better pay in business or in skilled work. The best teachers are frequently offered in other professions a more remunerative salary, with the result that a kind of negative selection takes place. Therefore, the best teachers do not join the teaching profession or, once they have joined it, soon leave it. Another consequence is that the average teacher tries to supplement his insufficient pay by private tuition and outside work, which, besides impairing the proper discharge of his duties, favors the existence of that type of teacher-politician who gets for themselves and their friends an influential and lucrative position. According to Radhakrishnan Report Volume 1, p. 70, we can add to this, that as the schools and colleges themselves are pressed by economic difficulties, they admit more students than they can hold, cater for quantity instead of quality, and the rooms and halls become overcrowded to the detriment of efficiency. Unless things are considerably improved in this respect, education cannot prosper, says Gisbert P. State and education. The educational system is very influential in the life of society. It helps for rapid social progress. Therefore, the government has always taken a special interest in the unit. When a nation becomes communist, it first tries to bring the educational system under its rule. It also tries to transform the teachers into paid agents of its rule. This trend can also be found in democratic countries. State governments are not impartial in maintaining the schools. They give a preferential treatment to the schools run by private management. Therefore, the public could not understand that education is a social function. The teachers should be considered as the representative of the parent. Their main function is to educate the children. The educational functions of a state. The state is considered as the supreme coordinating power. It has the right to supervise the education of the community. It can help the school by giving finance. It can introduce new schemes in education. Thus, it can promote the advancement of education. Educational institutions must be given full freedom. The state should not dictate conditions and terms to schools and colleges. It should not show discrimination against any type of schools and colleges. The permission to have charters to universities is one of the best guarantees for ensuring a living and adaptable system of education. We should make an attempt to wipe out illiteracy with all the resources of knowledge, enthusiasm, and devotion. Education should be open to all, especially to the rising generation. The opportunities and facilities of getting a suitable education should be provided. We need the contributions of everyone to build up a strong country. The system of education must be such that the contribution of the best and most fit citizens are available. The most promising young men without the distinction of class, race or religion must be specially trained. They can contribute to the welfare of society to the best of their ability. They can also give good leadership, which is so urgently needed. They can renew the life blood of the nation. Society cannot stagnate, and there has to be stability and progress. This is not only the task of the state of government but the concern of all citizens and institutions of free India. These are the views on state and education expressed by P. Gisbert S.J. in his book Fundamentals of Sociology. Summary. Education is one of the basic activities of all human societies. A man without education is one who has eyes without sight. A man without education was taken blind intellectually. Education was considered the third eye of the modern world, which is full of problems. An educated man solves problems better than an uneducated man. An educated man, even if he is very rich, cannot live comfortably in this miserable world. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe and share.